Welcome back. Last video I talked about variables and data types, and I talked about the int, float, and string data types. But there's one other data type that I didn't mention because it's more relevant to this video, which is the boolean. I'm going to create a variable. I'm going to call it var bool equals true. A boolean can only be two values, true or false. It can't be anything else. You can set a variable to one of these values directly, or you can use operators like we did last video. For example, 1 is equal to 1. And this will simply check to see if 1 is equal to 1. And the result should be true, because 1 is equal to 1, I would hope. There are a few more here, so we've got a bunch of new stuff here. This one is for checking if the left side is equal to the right side. This second one is for checking if the left side is greater than or equal to the right side. This one is checking to see if the left side is less than or equal to the right side. This one's checking to see if it's greater than the right side, not equal to. So for example, if I change those two to 1 here, I'll get rid of the others just to clear things up. 1 is greater than or equal to 1 will return true, because 1 is greater than or equal to 1. It is equal to 1, therefore it is true. This one here only checks to see if 1 is greater than 1, which is false. And then we finally have 2 is less than 1, which is false. And then we have 2 is not equal to 1. So this one is basically the opposite of this one. Now let's get rid of all that and show you a practical way of using booleans. This is an if statement. And the logic is pretty intuitive. The if statement takes a boolean in between these two brackets. If that boolean is true, the code in here runs. So if I just do trace hello, and there we go. It says hello in the console, because true is true. What a surprise. If we put false in here and run it again, we don't get anything in the console. And that's because if there is a false boolean in between these brackets, the code will not run. Instead, it will just skip the entire statement. You can add extra steps to this statement. So for example, you can do an else and add another set of braces. I'm just going to print out else. And now if I run this, it prints out else. And that's because the statement checks to see if this boolean is true. If it's true, it runs this. Else, it runs this. You can also do one more thing, which is add an else if. This gives you yet another step. What do you think this code will do? I'll give you time to pause if you want to figure that out. It prints world. That's because if false, well, false is not true. So skip this. The next step is else if true. Well, true is true. So trace world. Now, of course, putting false and true in here all the time doesn't make much sense. Normally, when you're using if statements, you would be using variables. So if I use var score is equal to 10, I could say if score is greater than 10, or else if score is greater than 5. In this case, score is not greater than 10, so it skips this first step, but score is greater than 5, so it will print world. And once again, world is printed. So that's if statements, but you will find an alternative to if statements in some code, and this is called a switch statement. We start off by writing switch. I'm just going to add another variable at the top, var number is equal to 1, and we'll put number in this switch statement here. And now I'm going to write out case 1 colon, whoa. If you run into that, by the way, just press Ctrl-Z or Command-Z, and it will undo that, so that's fine. Trace, and then I can do case 2, trace, oops, that's supposed to be on the other line, there we go, and then default trace something else. This is a switch statement. It works very similarly to the if statement. We have a variable called number. We put it in a switch statement. And basically, the switch statement will check to see what value this number is. So if number is equal to 1, trace 1. If number is equal to 2, trace 2. If number is equal to anything else, trace something else. You could see this case statement as if number is equal to 1, for example, and default would be else. And that's switch statements basically. Because this is a short video, I want to teach one more thing, and it's a shortcut that you will use all the time. I'm going to create another variable, score. Normally when you want to add to the score, you will type in score is equal to score plus 1. This just takes the current value of score, which is 10, and adds 1 to it, and stores it back in score. So you end up just adding 1 to score. But you can shorten this code by writing score plus equals 1. These two lines of code are identical. So whenever you see this operator, just know it's going to be score is equal to score plus 1. This will work with any other operator. So score minus equals 1 works the same if you're subtracting. And one that's slightly more rare, but you will still see, is score plus plus, which is just score plus equals 1. And minus minus, which is score minus equals 1. All right, challenge time. Your challenge is to rewrite the following if statement as a switch statement. So take this if statement and rewrite it into a switch statement that is exactly the same in functionality. That's pretty much it. Again, I'll put the answer in the comments, and I'll see you in the next video.